The information provided in this podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available in this podcast are for general information purposes only.
All right, welcome to another episode of SME and You, where we bring on subject matter experts in the name, image, and likeness space to talk about student athletes, name, image, and likeness, and how we can set them up to succeed in this brand new space. I am your host, Peter Schoenthal. I am the least important person on this podcast, and I am joined, and it is a pleasure to be joined by Matthew Kaplan and Riyadh Shanawani from Myriad Capital. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Peter.
And so today's topic, it looks like we're going to be speaking about wealth management. It's a great question. I actually want to start on that because I talked to you all a little bit offline before. And my initial question was, what is the difference between wealth managers or financial advisors? Are they interchangeable? Are they kind of the same? I'm going to throw it to you all. Is there a difference, and what is it?
Great question, Peter. Well, wealth managers and financial advisors, it is an interchangeable term. And a lot of people will say I'm a financial advisor, but the finance encompasses a lot of things. You have investment planning, retirement planning. It could go into so many different fields that you could focus on. You could even get to focusing on certain industries in the wealth management industry. It could be oil, it could be technology, it could be consumer staples. So the wealth manager, generally what they do is encompass a lot of things between estate planning, protecting your assets, growing your assets. There's a lot of different things. And the financial advisor really encompasses that as well. So it is an interchangeable term, but generally wealth manager probably works with higher net worth people and not higher net worth, folks. So generally more encompasses more estate planning, tax strategies within the investment platform and the retirement planning platform.
No, that's great. I officially now like the term wealth manager better than financial advisor. So I appreciate that.
There you go.
So one of the things we like to kind of talk with our audience is why you all are a subject matter expert, right? We're on this Me and You podcast. What kind of qualifies you all to talk on wealth management? So let's start with Matt. Matt, can you talk to me a little bit about your background and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'll give a quick little history of my background. So I've been in the industry for 3 years now. I'm actually a career changer. I have a master's degree in architecture. I was doing that for a while, but on the side, I was teaching myself about the finance industry. I took some financial classes online. So I'm totally self-taught. And I got to a point where I was doing the financial stuff way more, and I was obsessed with it, and I really enjoyed doing it way more than the architecture stuff. So kind of came to a point where I knew that I needed to make that a career. So I took the leap about 3 years ago, and started out kind of becoming an expert in the insurances. So I was doing a lot of life, long-term care, disability insurances, but ultimately realized that I got into the industry to really focus on the assets under management. So I've been working with Riyadh for almost a year now, and really been focusing on the wealth management side of things. So that's kind of my brief background.
And for those that don't know, which is every single one of you, I've actually known Matt for a very long time, grew up in the same town, and I've known him since he was a wee boy. Riyadh, same question for you, a little bit about yourself, your background, and why name, image, and likeness spoke to you.
Sure. So I went to college at the University of Florida, and it was a great school.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a lot of people will say that. So, but we still won national championships versus FSU back in the day, even though I have a lot of friends from there. So at the end of the day,
listen, I'm going to cut you off. I want you to go. We beat you the first time though. All right. And you should have never got another shot at us. Thanks a lot, Texas, for losing the Big 12 championship.
I'll take a 52-20 at the Sugar Bowl any day in 1997. Those were great days.
I've erased that from my memory.
I was actually at that game too. So I really enjoyed, being at Florida, having friends at FSU, and, just the whole college atmosphere between, basketball, football, just all the different sports that are out there. And so I played high school soccer, and I played since I was 4 years old. And I wound up actually playing against some semi-professional guys. Some of them became MLS players, and one of them was like the top or second top scorer in the MLS Major League Soccer years ago. However, my senior year in high school, I tore my ACL. And, so really crushed my hopes back then. This is in the late 90s as far as becoming a professional athlete. And I said, you know what, let me just focus on my career. I realized business was my favorite class, specifically was finance. My whole family are in the medical field. They're all medical doctors, 8 medical doctors, my family. There was really no one except, one cousin that was in the industry. So I decided to, pursue wealth management. I started in, I think, 1999. So it's been over 20 years.
Wow.
I love it. Like I said, I did my undergrad at UF, did the CFP program, which is Certified Financial Planner at University of Miami. And I'm a student at the game. I love it. I love training other advisors and other wealth managers. And this is something that I have a big passion for and helping people. And especially if someone wants to become an athlete or is an athlete, and if they make it, great, that's awesome. And, but if they don't, you could become a professional, you could do just as well financially, and you could have a real awesome career. And that's why I have a passion as far as helping athletes, whether they become an athlete or stay as an athlete, or if they work as a professional doctor, business person, whatever it is that they love to do, we'd love to help them out.
No, it's so true. And I think one of the things that we see with a lot of athletes, especially college athletes that don't go pro, is many of them end up being very successful no matter what field they go into because of that work ethic, because of that commitment and the ability to put in as much time as possible and as much time as needed. Most college athletes don't know any different, right? And this growing up, when you're an athlete growing up, you put in so much time in practice and you dedicate so much of your life to your craft. And then you go to college and do the same thing. You don't know any other way. And it's actually why we see a lot of depression when athletes do leave college, because they don't have that guidance. They don't know what to do with their time a lot, of the time, if you'll.
And I have to admit, I got, my grades probably suffered the one semester when I did tear my ACL. It was really tough because that was my big passion. Like I said, I was playing since I was like 3 or 4 years old for 15, 16 years. And then when that happens, it is devastating. And back then it was probably a career ending blow. It's not as much now these days.
You're not that old, but no, I understand what you mean. So, well, listen, we're here to talk about student athletes, and we're obviously talking about how we can help student athletes succeed in name, image, and likeness. Yeah. We're in a new space. This is a new thing. I think most people would agree that this is a good thing if done the right way. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and Matt, let's start. What were your thoughts when name, image, and likeness became a thing on July 1st?
I was very excited about it. I remember when I was like 7 or 8, playing on the PlayStation 1, playing NCAA football, playing as like the Texans, running as Ricky Williams, and there were no names on the back. And I definitely noticed that as a kid. I didn't really know what it was about, but obviously you grew up, and I've come a long way since then. But yeah, no, it's always been something that has kind of caught my eye. So yeah, no, it's definitely something that I'm interested in doing. And now that I'm in a position to be able to help the athletes and help the people that are in that position, it's great. And obviously I'm all for it. I'm 100% behind the athletes. I definitely think it hasn't been fair for many, many years, making billions and billions of dollars off of their name, image, and likeness. And now it's finally now it's finally starting to turn the tables a little bit and be able to go in the athlete's favor. So got to take advantage.
Riyadh, let me throw the same question your way. When you heard name, image, and likeness was going live and was the new way of college athletics, what were your thoughts?
I think that's awesome. I mean, look, the world has changed and technology's out there. Back in the day, when we were in school, there was nothing like this. So for the athletes to take advantage of this and make some income, I think is awesome. And I think it should have been done a long, long time ago. But now, look, there's social media out there, and if people follow you, and back then we didn't have that. We didn't have these kind of, social media platforms, Instagram and the Facebooks and all that good stuff. We just never had that back then. And the internet had just come out back in the mid 90s. So I think this is great. It's a transformation for athletes, and it's a great opportunity for them. And I think it's wonderful they're going to capitalize on this, and they will. And I'm sure it's going to be awesome for them, and they're going to love it.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect storm, right? Name, image, and likeness for student athletes is starting in a time where athlete empowerment and owning your brand and owning your name, image, and likeness is kind of the way of the world in professional sports. So I think marrying those two during this time was kind of the perfect storm in a positive way.
Absolutely.
We're still new in a space.
Yes.
it's all roses in the media. Obviously, there'll be issues, there'll be scandals like anything else. But I think
Yes.
overall, as we get more and more legislation and we're guided in the right direction, this is going to continue to be a beautiful thing. And I'm just glad it's here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're talking about 18 to 22-year-old students. And I know when I was that age, if I came into any money, even if it was a couple extra $100 or $1,000 monthly, I don't know if I would have been the best at monitoring and managing that money and saving. So talk to me a little bit about student athletes who are receiving NIL income. Why is it important for them to potentially work with a wealth manager to protect themselves? Riyadh, let's start with you.
Sure. So it is important because there's something called the compounding of money, Peter, and compounding money is so powerful. It's, when you invest early, put your money away at 22 or even 18, and you could actually stretch that money for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you can become financially independent much earlier. It's almost like a tree. If you want to plant a farm and you seed and put seeds everywhere and plant the tree, it's going to, but after 10, 15 years, it's going to bear fruit and it could feed your entire family for generations. And that's what compounding money is. I like to use that analogy because it's money that grows without you having to work. If you wait longer, do it in your 30s or 40s or 50s, you might have to save 10 times the amount that you're saving when you're 18 or 20, just because your time frame is short. Your assets don't have as much time versus when you're 18, 22, they could grow over 20, 30, 40 years. So like I said, you can literally feed the entire family on the farm if you start early. So it is important that you have a good sense of money management, and having a professional is crucial.
I love that. We have a phrase when we speak with athletes: I'd rather you live a life like a prince than a day like a king. And I think what you're talking about really fits in that. So I want to continue on this because I think you touched on something very important. Can you give like a real life example and go further on compounding and explain that to the student?
So when I started in the industry, I was 22, like I said, and even when I was in college, I was the little beer money that we had. We traded some stocks, as kids, and I realized finance was my passion, and that's how I got into it. And there was a study, I'd have to pull it up and I'd have to share it with you, Peter. And but basically showed that if someone put in like $200 a month from age 18 to 27, and if they semi-retired or retired at age 65, so you literally put in the money from 18 to 27, 8-9 years. And if you take someone else that doesn't start at 18, but instead they start at 27 and they put that money in all the way to age 65, it's about a couple $100 a month. Who do you think has more money? The one that started from 18 and stopped at 27 and only invested for 9 years, or the other person invested for approximately 40 years from 18 to 65?
Well, my common sense would say the latter, but I feel like I'm getting set up for a trick here. So
it is a trick question. So so common sense would say the latter, but it's actually the first one. And I forgot what the numbers are. I'd have to pull out the chart. It was like about $1 million or so. So you only save. Yes.
Why is that though? So it's a great example, right?
Yeah.
So if I put $200 a month away from age, I think you used 18 to 29 or 18 to 27.
Yes.
I'm going to make more money on when you say compounding, I'm assuming you're talking about the compounding interest.
Yes, compounding.
I'm going to make more money that way than if I saved from 27 on. Can you kind of explain why?
So let's talk about that. So let's say we start from 18 to 20. Let's say 18 to 20. Let's say it's 10 years. Let's say it's $2,000 a year to make. Numbers easy. That's 20 grand. So now you're 27, 28 years old. That 20 grand that you saved has already grown with compounding interest. Let's say it's 10%, maybe it's $30,000, $40,000. So you already got now $30,000 at 27 working for you. So each year it's making you $3,000 a year, $2,000 to $3,000 a year if you're making around 10% or so. Versus the person that's starting, your buddy started at the same time. Now they only have $2,000 at age 28. Versus you have about 30, 40,000, give or take. So your investments are already making 3,000 to 4,000 more than what he's saving every single year, because his $2,000 is only making him a couple $100 a year.
So is there like a layman's term, a short definition, a short definition for compounding interest? Can you kind of break that down and explain that?
Well, the short definition I would say is just like your money's making money on top of the money that you already made. So that's why I like to use that analogy again of the fruit. Hey, look, your tree just bared one fruit, but after 10 years, now it's got 10 fruits and you can feed the family. And there's 10 fruits in the next 20 years after that, or 30 years, now there's 100 fruits. versus your buddy that started, 10 years later, they only have the seed in there while you have 10 fruits already. So it's almost the same kind of thing. There's formulas on compounding of interest. You can probably Google it and you can get the calculator. It's just much easier to use a financial calculator, but you could actually utilize the formulas, the algebraic formulas, and figure it out if you really want to know the nitty gritty and the details of it. But at the end of the day, just understand, look, you start early, you're gonna have a lot more. You don't need to know how to drive the car or what the car is made out of to drive a car. We just drive the car for us. So at the end of the day, I would just understand, start early. You will do much better than waiting. And if you have that grasp and get that, it'll be much easier for you in the future.
Matt, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of try to make it a little more of a real life situation, just some basic numbers. I'm just going to throw some, just to make it round and even. If you have $100,000, 5% of $100,000 is $5,000. If you start with $100,000 and you make $5,000, you're making that each year, 1 year. If you start with $10,000, that's only 500. So that's the difference. If you start with a bigger number, the same percentage of that number is going to be significantly larger than the same percentage of the smaller number. That's really how the compounding interest works. So the bigger your number, the same percentage growth is going to just be more money. So that's why starting early is better, because you are able to accumulate more money earlier, and then the same percentage values just adds additional money to your money as it gets bigger. I guess
So what I'm hearing is
easy as it gets.
So what I'm hearing is that in your younger years, college years, the more you can save, the more you're setting yourself up for future wealth, because that money will just make more and more money over time without you having to do much work.
Absolutely. And I just want to also add to a question that you brought up just before we got into this conversation, why it's important to work with a wealth manager earlier in your life, in the college years, especially for student athletes, and using your terms with the athlete's mentality. Their mentality is always just win and be the best and all this stuff. But a lot of times that comes with showing off, and you're not necessarily, you're more inclined, and especially as a kid, you want to have the coolest things. You want to be up with everything, with the fashion, and a lot of the time, you end up saving what you have left after spending. But Warren Buffett famously has said, you have to spend what you have left after saving. So if you save first, and like Riyadh said, if it's $100, $200 a month, it's not that much in the long run. If you can just put that away first, and then that you have that in the bank, the rest you can spend and be fine. That's one of the reasons why it's important to work with someone like us, because we put that budget together with our clients. We help them kind of just manage the money at a basic level like that.
Yeah, this is way more valuable information than algebra and geometry. So thank you for coming
Yes.
on and educating these student athletes. So I want to stay on the topic of compounding interest. It's all about maximizing how much money your money makes for you. So when most people think of saving money, they think of money in their bank account. I'm going to have a savings account in my bank account. Are there smarter places to put your savings in order to earn more money and get a higher percentage and a higher return on your savings?
So good question, Peter. So compound interest, the definition of it is the interest on a loan or deposit that accrues on both the initial principal and accumulated interest from previous periods. So what it means, it keeps adding and adding. So the answer is yes, it can be, and maybe it might not be. So you want to have, first of all, some money in your savings account, generally to pay for 6 months to 12 months of living expenses, just because you might need it for an emergency, buying a new car, maybe putting a down payment on something, or you just might need it. After that, as you build, then you might want to look into other investments. So equities are a good source to invest money in. That's stocks, but you got to know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, that could also hurt you. I've also seen, when I started in the industry, people quit their jobs to become day traders. I've literally seen people lose all their money becoming a day trader.
Yep.
So it becomes very, very difficult and it could be a passion, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can really hurt yourself. So you want to make sure you know what you're doing. And if not, hire a professional. It's usually better to hire a professional. I think that's the reason why I got into the business, to say, hey, look, I really don't know what I'm doing this part-time, trading stocks here in college. And I realized, I did lose a lot of money back then. That when you do it professionally, there's the difference between professional advice and just buying anything and everything. Generally, stocks are one of the best performing assets. There's other things like real estate and stocks, and fixed income is not as much these days because interest rates is low. 10-year treasury right now is like 1.7%. That's a little bit more details, but you want to have your money grow. You want to have it smart, but at the same time, having a good savings account as a good cushion is also paramount.
I want to add to that real quick.
Please.
Also, it's so your question is are there better places to put your money? The answer, there's a long and a short answer. Really, it comes down to what you need your money to be doing for you. So it's not really the question you asked isn't really the right question. The question needs to be, what do you need your money for? Sometimes, like Riyadh said, you might need some cash in case of emergency. So in that case, you should definitely have cash in your savings account or something similar. So, but up to a certain point, you don't need that money in that savings account because, again, to your question, there are places where it can be making more money for you. So really our job is to work with people to determine where and how much your cash should be saved.
No, that's great. And one of the things that you all harped on essentially with working with the right people is knowing what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And setting yourself up for success is surrounding yourself with people and professionals that know the areas of life that you don't. And so I want to kind of stay on that, because there's a lot of phrases out there that get thrown around. And I think a lot of our audience, including me, don't always know the difference between those phrases. So is there a difference between financial planning, wealth management, and portfolio management? And if so, what are those differences?
Yeah, so portfolio management is just specifically on investments only. So that's the only thing you're doing is focusing on investments. Wealth management could encompass not only investments, but also protecting your assets. Also, how to set it up where you get something called tax deferral. So there's certain things like certain types of accounts, like you've heard of 401ks, 403bs, 457 deferred comps, IRAs, simple IRAs, solo 401. I could go on and on, but those get a tax favor where basically your money grows and you don't pay taxes as it grows. Well, that's important too, because that's almost like another way of compounding money when you're able to save money on taxes. So an analogy I like to use is like if you have a bucket with water in it. Well, if you have to pay taxes on your investments every year, then it's like having a hole in your bucket and it's just dripping. And that's what the taxes is doing. Now, if you're able to do it where you don't pay taxes as it grows, that could be very impactful. And a lot of people are not aware of that. So that's where Matt and we come in and we help our clients say, hey, how do we also save you money on taxes at the same time with your investments? Because there's certain investments where you have to pay ordinary dividends. There's other ones you pay capital gains. There's tax-free investments like, say, Roth IRAs that you've heard of. Sometimes cash value life insurance policies if it's structured the right way. So there's different ways. And I think wealth management encompasses the tax strategies, the investments, the the retirement planning, and also protection planning with your family and your loved ones. That is more on the wealth management side. And the financial advisor, again, it's interchangeable. And a lot of times people will say, I'm a financial advisor, but they might only do investments only, and they don't do maybe protection planning, or they might do only some retirement stuff. So it depends on who you are working with, what their strong suit is. Do they really do planning? And is there a financial plan, like a written plan? It's important to have a written plan. I think that's what differentiates us from a lot of our competitors. Because the one thing, Peter, that I want to tell you that's so important is they have this thing that a study that they did in Harvard. Basically, they got 100 people, graduates from Harvard, that 3% of them write down their actual goals in life, financial, everything else. They came back to that study 25, 30 years later. They said the top 3% that wrote down their goals, they're also Harvard graduates, had a higher net worth than the other 97%.
Wow.
And that's the power of writing down what you want to accomplish in life. And that's also from a financial standpoint. I think that's what drove me into the industry to train and say, hey, we want to do it the right way. We got to have a plan on you. Yes, we understand you want to make more money. Everybody does. Who doesn't? We all do. But if we actually have a roadmap of how are we going to get there, what do we want to accomplish in life? How do we want to live? What's our lifestyle? We'll get you there, in my opinion, a lot faster than just saying, I want to have a lot of money.
I mean, it's like sports, right?
Yeah.
If you have a game plan, right?
Yes.
You work on the game plan, you study the game plan, you look at film, and you write down your weekly objectives for a game. You
Absolutely.
probably have a better chance of winning that game than if you just kind of show up on Saturday and try to play.
So, and the top athletes, what do? They envision winning the championship in their mind before they even get to the championship. And that's what we want to do for you.
Yeah, I think a great phrase for that is failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? And
Right.
the opposite of that is when you make those preparations and you envision what you want to do long term and you put pen to paper and then you actually attack that goal, you usually have more success in life. And I think that applies whether you're in the financial world or the sport world, or no matter what world you're in, legal, doctor. I think that always applies.
Great advice that we always say is plan your work and work your plan.
I like that. I'm going to steal that one. Matt, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Riyadh covered it pretty well. I mean, yeah, I just want to touch on the portfolio manager part of that is, yeah, you don't really want to be working with a portfolio manager. They're literally just managing just a small amount of investment. So you really want to be working with a wealth manager or a financial advisor, like Riyadh said. They're pretty interchangeable. But yeah, it's really all about getting to know the client on a deeper level and making sure you're protected. And like you said, take so much into consideration versus literally just focusing on one part of it, which is the investments and making more money. So yeah, that's why the difference between the wealth manager and the portfolio manager.
So this next question is going to be a little tricky because I'm going to ask for 3 things from each of you. Okay. But you can't copy one another. So it's really sick. All right. So let's do this. And Matt, I'm going to start with you. For student athletes that are just getting into the NIL game, what are 3 financial tips they should consider as they begin making money and profiting off of their name, image, and likeness? Matt?
Yeah, good question. I think the first one we've already covered. It's budget. Like I said, you should be spending what you have left over after saving, not vice versa. So budget and save first is just the first thing. Make sure that you are covered in that respect. Number 2 might be debt management. I know a lot of people sometimes get into some credit card debt where there might be some other options or some other things like that. Just kind of manage your debt. Make sure you don't get into too deep a hole if that's the route you need to go. And if so, figure out how you can get yourself out in the best way possible. Yeah, debt can be pretty detrimental to any financial plan. If you're starting behind the 8 ball, it's never a good thing. And then I guess I was the insurance professional for a little bit. So I would say get insurance because it's the cheapest you will ever have it is when you're younger. You can get a policy that for like $15 a month. It's like almost nothing. It can be, and you can be covered for like $1 million in term or something like that, roughly. And the more, you never know what's going to happen in life. You can get sick, you can get hurt. And once those things happen, you become uninsurable. So you want to make sure that you are covered before anything happens. And it's, again, cheaper when you're younger. So might as well get it while you're young.
Riyadh, I'm going to go to you, but I'm going to help you out because sure. I'm going to give the audience one of the tips you already gave, which I think is so important, which really goes with this, which is planning and setting goals. So that's one of yours, right? I think that is one of the most important things we've talked about today. You need to have a plan in place. You need to execute it. And if you do, you'll be successful, right? So you only have to give me 2 because one of your tips today was so good that I'm already giving it to you because I want to be in the answer.
Just look at the other thing is once you start making money, like kind of what you want to do is you're going to have a lot of friends now. They're all going to want to party with you. They're going to want to travel with you. They're going to have, pop champagne bottles, whatever it is that you want to do if you're not 21 yet. And if you are 21 yet, hopefully you don't have a fake ID. I don't want to say anything about that. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of friends. We all had fun in college. Everybody had their keg stands and beer and all that stuff. You're going to have fun in life. So you're going to have a lot more friends when you have a lot more money than before. So you got to watch out and you got to nourish the money that you make because it might not come back. You want to make sure you protect it. So you want to make sure that you keep what you're doing, hire a professional. Again, they'll keep you in line. And as long as, look, you're young, you don't need to know everything about life. I sure didn't at 18, not even at 22. I came out and I was like, what am I going to do? I know what I like, but I still didn't know what I was going to do. So at the end of the day, you're still young. You got to figure it out. It might take you a little while to figure it out, but just kind of stay focused and you will figure it out. But just keep an eye out on those that just become your friend, because now all of a sudden you have a lot of money.
So let's recap that. The 6 tips as you get into the financial NIL game for student athletes: budget, avoid debt, get good insurance plans, plan for the future, nourish and protect the money you have, and hire a professional that knows what they're doing to guide you in the right direction.
Hit it on the dot. I mean, that's I would say that's the major ones. The one thing that I also want to share with you is, everybody knows Einstein, and Einstein said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So I just want to leave you with that one too.
I love that. You might get a student athlete that hears that and gets that as a tattoo. I mean, that's very strong words. So one of the things I really appreciate you all coming on is I've learned a lot, and you all come across as very trustworthy. And I think that's very important for student athletes when picking a financial advisor or a wealth manager, right? If you don't know someone in that space, how can I know who to pick and who to trust? So the question I'm going to ask both of you, and Matt, let's start with you. What should a student athlete look for when hiring a wealth manager?
When looking for a wealth manager, first and foremost, make sure that they are a fiduciary at the very least. Avoid the word agent. Those are people who are not necessarily certified to be doing everything that we can possibly be doing. And also, I know that it's an option to go farther with that, and not required, but very recommended to get someone who is a CFP, a certified financial planner. So me being 3 years in the industry, that's my next step. But anybody working with me is also working with Riyadh. He's been in the industry for over 20 years. He's a CFP. It's just a certification that it takes a lot of training. It's very hard to do. And the people who are CFPs really know what they're talking about. So that's something that you need to be looking out for. Definitely avoid agents. And one of the reasons why I ended up joining Myriad Capital was because we are an independent wealth manager. So we aren't beholden to any company. We are complete independent brokers. So be careful of the bigger players in the game. A lot of the time they're just there to kind of bring you in, throw you into a pile of their clients, and not necessarily take good care of you per se. I guess a good question is, when's the last time you spoke to your advisor? But I guess that doesn't apply to someone who's looking for the first time. But yeah, somebody who is going to be following up, someone who's going to be in touch with you, somebody who really cares about you is important to find.
Riyadh?
I would add to that, make sure you work with someone that's got 10 years experience, because there's so much that has changed in this industry, and someone that's experienced has seen a lot of things. I've been through 3 downturns in the stock market, from, the .com bubble in 2000, financial crisis, 2007, and even last year with COVID. So I've seen it 3 times. Someone's only seen an upwards trajectory does not know, what happens when the storm comes through. It's just like when you're flying with a pilot. Look, the pilot is on autopilot, but we could all probably fly an airplane. But when there's a storm, something serious happens, we want to make sure that pilot knows how to land that plane, and that's where they get trained.
One of my favorite phrases on why you work and hire a consultant or an expert is you're paying them to avoid the mistakes they made in the past, right?
There you go.
And so I think that's very important as it pertains to working with individuals that specialize in areas that you don't, and finding trustworthy people to rely on, because that's how people succeed. When the team around you is a good team and a trustworthy team and is guiding you in the right direction in all aspects of life, that's how you succeed. Nobody succeeds on their own. So we talked about what to look for in a wealth manager, right? How do I know? And Riyadh, I want to start with you. How do I know if my wealth manager is doing a good job for me?
Well, I think one good thing is that you could learn is if they have testimonials from other clients they've been working with for many, many years. That's a testament of someone that's done a good job and knows what they're doing and how to handle different things in different avenues. It's going to be difficult, Peter, to really know if someone's doing a good job just because people don't know. I myself, I'm not a medical doctor, but if my doctor says, Riyadh, take this medicine, fine. I'm going to take it. I trust them. And if you have chemistry with that person and you trust them and they seem like they know what they're doing, they probably do, but not everybody does. At the end of the day, we do it a little bit different. Just like people's doctors, we actually get your x-ray, MRI, get your blood work, figure out what's going on, and then we prescribe the medicine. In my opinion, that's the best way to do it. Not everybody does it that way, but I don't want to just give you the medicine just because he said you have a headache. We want to diagnose you, make sure that we prescribe the right thing for you.
Matt?
I think if you get together with your financial advisor and the first thing they say is, look how much I beat the S&P by, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. It's not about just beating the market on 1 year basis. It's like Riyadh said, it's about diagnosing what your longer term goals are, what your plan is, making sure that we know how to land that plane in case of an emergency. It's not all about it's not about a snapshot. It's about the bigger picture. Just make sure that you're talking about bigger things rather than just 1 year's return. So that's it.
Are there any resources that student athletes should be looking into during this new time of name, image, and likeness that can help them with their wealth management?
There are so many books out there, Peter. There's so much out there that you could learn. If you really want to learn about it, you can. If you have no interest, hire someone. And even if you do want to learn about it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with learning, but just make sure you're getting proper advice and do it with a professional, like we said. And if you're really passionate about it, come join us. This is it's a great industry. That's all what I have to say is if you really like it, why don't you do it for a living?
That's great advice, Matt.
I would definitely echo that. I mean, that's how I got into it. I literally started just from, like I said, a passion and a side hustle. And I ended up joining him. So, if you're interested in it, and even if you're not super interested in it, you just want to learn a little bit more, just start doing your own research, listen to some podcasts, watch some YouTube videos, do some very basic things to get a very basic knowledge of the industry and what you can be doing. And then from there, look into more professional things. And like Riyadh said, there's a lot of books. There's some courses you can take. But the very basics you can be doing is just kind of make sure that you're up to date. Follow the market. Watch CNBC sometimes instead of watching ESPN for the fifth loop of the day. Throw it on MSNBC. Hear what they're listening to. Follow the market a little bit. Get to know some of these businesses and what the market's really made of, and just know what they're talking about.
I feel attacked by that ESPN comment because that's me. I think that's also great advice though, because by educating yourself on, maybe the basics, such as the stuff we talked about today, student athletes will then know the right questions to ask when looking for a wealth manager, right? I think a lot of the times when we're looking for professionals to help us in certain areas, if we don't know the right questions to ask, if we don't have a baseline of the information needed, it's hard to know who's the right person for me. So I think, just doing a little bit of research, you don't have to be an expert, but doing a little bit of research in the industry and what wealth managers do will allow you to ask the right questions when looking for the right wealth manager for you. So that was awesome. So we're wrapping up here. You all have been awesome. I've learned a lot. I realize that I'm not doing enough with my own savings. So thank you very much. Matt, let's start with you on this last question though. If I'm a student athlete and I listen to this podcast, what is the one thing you think that the student athlete should take away and incorporate into their normal day-to-day lives?
I think really just comes down to really just being aware of your financial situation. Just don't ignore it. A lot of people kind of just don't pay enough attention to it. So really just focus on it, make sure you have a plan and you know what you're doing, and and like Riyadh brought up a little bit earlier, if you're coming into a little bit of money, not all of the student athletes are going to be making money on their name, image, likeness, are going to be making millions of dollars. Not everyone's going to make it as an athlete. But the money that you can make in this opportunity, it's a great opportunity. You got to take advantage of it while you can. And if you only have a very short amount of time to do it, which is typically 4 years for an average college student, just make sure that you're not wasting it. Even for any money that comes in, whether it's $100 or $1,000 or you end up making $1 million, just make sure you have a plan for it and just don't let it go to waste.
Riyadh?
Well, Peter, excellent question. I think a big thing, like to echo what Matt said, is do something that you love. If you make it as a professional athlete, that's awesome. That's probably the most rewarding thing that you can do for yourself. But if you don't, that's okay. Find something you really enjoy. And it might take you a few years, but if you do love it, you'll probably be good at it. You'll probably make money and it won't be work. I love what I do. I know Matt does too. We don't look at it as work and we truly enjoy it. And I think if you could find that passion, something that you can do that you would love, I think financially you'll be okay. You'll be doing well. And just be a giver. And if you do that, life will be good, and just have a balanced life and figure it out. Don't overspend, save for a rainy day, enjoy your friends and family and be social, and just, don't beat yourself up too much, especially when you're 18, 20, 22, but maybe start taking it seriously when you're in your mid 20s.
Riyadh, that's very powerful, because there's two things. One, your 20s are the time to make your mistakes, right? So figure out what you do love, right? And don't be afraid to fail. And, that doesn't mean be reckless and don't plan for certain things, but really find out what makes you tick. Because as we get older in life, I think you realize that in order to be great at something and not good, you have to do the little things. And in order to do the little things on a consistent basis, you have to have a passion for what you do, and it has to be your purpose. And the difference between good and great is those little things. And so I couldn't agree more with what you said from a conceptual level. And I think our student athletes are really going to appreciate that, and really anyone who listens to this podcast, because this podcast isn't just for student athletes. Matt, Riyadh, you guys were awesome. I learned so much. I'm so grateful that you all were able to come on here and spit some knowledge in the financial world for these student athletes. And I know not only myself, but student athletes are better for it because of you all coming on and talking about wealth management. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome.